You leave the conversation and something follows you out. It isn't a thought or a memory, it's something heavier. Your friend vents about her marriage, and hours later, you are the one who can't breathe. Most people label this as empathy. You've likely spent years taking pride in being the sensitive one, the person people call when things get dark because you actually feel it. That chronic exhaustion suggests a specific failure in your psychological filtering mechanism. The weight is real, but it belongs to a process with a name, a mechanism, and a way out. Carl Jung approached these emotional transfers with clinical precision. He identified a specific process where unresolved pain migrates from one person's unconscious into another's when the psychological boundary is too porous to hold. Jung called this a psychic infection. It is a state of unconscious identity, where what someone else feels stops being theirs and starts being yours, often without your awareness or consent. Jung termed our original psychological condition participation mystique. It is a primitive state of merger where the self has no clear outline and the individual remains indistinguishable from their environment. Every infant begins here. A child absorbs the emotional atmosphere of the home as naturally as a sponge absorbs water. At this stage, the psyche registers all nearby suffering as its own, because there is no other yet. Maturation requires emerging from this merger. The developmental task of a lifetime is to build a distinct boundary, a psychological skin that allows you to be in contact with others without losing your own shape. If a child grows up where an adult's mood determines the safety of the room, they develop a hypervigilant radar. Tracking the parent's internal state becomes an urgent survival strategy. The nervous system often keeps this strategy active long after the danger has passed. The boundary remains porous and primitive, treating every nearby emotional disturbance as a signal that requires your personal response. This survival tactic eventually hardens into a caretaker persona. You stop being someone who tracks others out of necessity and become someone whose entire identity is built around neutralizing other people's tension. Unresolved emotional material exerts outward pressure. Encountering insufficient resistance, it transfers silently. It enters your nervous system as a direct signal, integrating before you can respond. Your body treats this foreign data as an internal emergency, spiking cortisol as if it were its own. Carl Jung identified this state as fusion. By jumping into the water to drown alongside someone else, you lose the ability to act as a witness or offer a rescue. Fusion creates two victims. By collapsing your boundary and absorbing the weight, you double the total suffering in the room, while providing the other person with your collapse instead of your presence. Jung's solution was individuation, the demanding process of becoming a distinctly differentiated self. This requires a stable enough identity that contact with another's pain does not cause your own internal distance to collapse. Real empathy depends on retaining your own psychological address. You must remain a separate person while witnessing the struggle. Otherwise, you have nothing of your own ground to offer. The caretaker persona presents a paradox. You cannot provide a stabilizing presence if you have disappeared into the emotions of whoever needs you most. To intercept a psychic infection, you must implement a mechanical pause. Before responding to the familiar pull of someone else's state, you have to bring the automatic reaction to a complete halt. Use that pause to run a diagnostic check. Ask yourself, what was I feeling before this? Which of these feelings arrived from somewhere else? Repeating these questions rebuilds the boundary that was never properly formed. It shifts your role from an unconscious sponge to a conscious observer. A defined self is infinitely more useful to someone in pain than a mirror that simply reflects their suffering back at twice the volume. You are allowed to care while remaining stubbornly, quietly yourself.